What's up, guys? Today we are going to be talking about how I do character creation at my Dungeons and Dragons table. Well, I mean, we're already here, so let's just get into it. So, I know the most common method that people do this is you roll 4d6 three times and then you take away the lowest one. Some other people also do roll 4d6 and then they take away the highest number. And then there's also just the straight 3d6 method, of course. And then you also have your standard array set of numbers that some people use, as well as point buy, which is basically you get a set number and you can put points where you want to in each of your stats. So I do things a little bit differently. I do at my table we use the 4d6 method, and we do take the three highest numbers. Um, But one thing I also do is I use the Matt Mercer method, but I made it a little bit more my own, where no matter what, you start with at least 116. And at my table, I roll that you still roll all six dice. So you're going to roll all six times. But after you see those rolls, you can replace the 16 with any number you want. So I know some of my players, sometimes they're like, oh, well, this might be too strong, or I don't know how I feel about this. So I'm like, okay, well, if you want, replace that 18 with the 16 maybe. Um, doesn't happen often, but it has happened. Or like if you want to replace the 13 with the 16 instead of the 9, you know? So I also, something else that I do is I don't just have my players roll one time. I want to make sure that my players are able to play the character that they really, really want to play the most and that they're able to have fun with it. So I actually have them roll three separate sets of six numbers. And they can't interchange these numbers, but they can pick which set of numbers that they want to use the most. And even if they, I know this is crazy. This is getting like a little bit crazy, but once they have their set of numbers that they want to use, if they don't like certain numbers, then I also allow them to change those numbers as long as they keep the same total or less than the original total, right? So take it, we have, you see this middle set of numbers here, right? The 14, 18, 13, 10. So if we scroll up here, you're going to see those same numbers, except the 10 has actually become a 9. And at my table, this would totally be okay. I think personally, this is my opinion. I don't ever force players to do this, but if someone asks me about it, I will suggest it. That having one negative stat or one at least lower stat is really good because it means that you need to rely on other party members to help you with things, and I think it also helps enhance roleplay. This is my personal opinion, but I think it's really good. So like if you always want to have your stat total less, you're also allowed to do that at my table. But say if you wanted to, so this was a 10, right? That's a 19, not. But if you wanted to just make this, say, let's say a 14 for wisdom, then instead what you would have to do is make sure that the point total was what it was. So instead of that 14, this would be a 10, let's say, and now our constitution is going to be a 13 instead of a 14. So in the end, it like balances out, but I think it just gives my players more creative freedom to actually do what they want and make sure that they're playing the character that they really want. Um, because I really like, customizability, and I think that this also it just makes the game more freeform in a way that allows my players to have fun. Um, and so hopefully no matter what, they're gonna get at least something that feels strong to them. Even if, and I will say, if my players like rolled all three of these and they were all complete garbage, like I'm talking like 9s, 10s, 11s, 8s through like out all of them, then I would let them re-roll all three sets again because that sucks. I I'm a dungeon master where I like having powerful PCs at my table, or at least I want my PCs to feel powerful, even if the characters themselves aren't that powerful. I want them to, maybe have at least that one like really high number, or like, have an ability that they're really excited about so that they feel strong. Because I think it's really fun in D&D. And also I'm the kind of DM that will make that strength hurt. I personally really like to challenge my players, and as long as they're having fun, they do. Let's just say there's a lot of death saving throws on my table, a lot. I'm a DM for very challenging encounters, because I also think that not all encounters you can just fight head on. If we're making it a little bit more realistic, sometimes you need to know when you have to run the fuck away. um but yeah, there's nothing too crazy, I think, about how I do character creation. I know it's a little more lax than a lot of tables, but it's okay. And also just to see the 16 in place, right? So say if I wanted my so I didn't actually add the 16 in here, but if my player was like, hey, I do want to use my 16, then I'd be like, okay, just what number do you want to swap out? And if they wanted to keep maybe their lower strength and have a higher con, then all they would have to do is switch out the 13 for 16, and that 16 can bypass their point total. That's the only exception. But I hope that wasn't too confusing. I hope I did an okay job explaining. And for actual racial ability score increases, I also always use Tasha's. I want my players to be able to choose. So no matter what race they choose, they can use they can put their scores wherever they want. Especially as long as like they have a slight reason for it. Like even if it's just like, oh, I read more books growing up, or oh, my parents were like unusually smart or whatever. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever, go for it. You know what I mean? And sometimes I don't even need that, but if they're like, yes, my Furbolg is the most charismatic bitch you ever seen. Well, all right, well, tell me why. Give me a little bit of reason. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And depending on whatever race they're playing, also they can just use the +2 or it's usually +2 +1, but also allow anything. And if players also at my table, if they're like, hey, so I have a 17 in, let's just say, charisma, and I really want to max that 17, but I still have to add my racial trait, my racial ASIs. Can I just have a +2 and a +1 in charisma? So essentially, it would be a +3 from the racial trait, but no, their stats would get boosted. I would say, sure, that's totally fine. Go for it. Because if that's the character that you want to play and you want to have that maxed out charisma, like right off the bat, I'm totally cool with that. When it comes to character creation, I'm a very lax DM as long as it can somewhat make sense, because I really just want my players to have fun at the table, and that's what matters to me the most. I also definitely am a challenging, like, my encounters as well are also really challenging. So that's another reason why I'm like, you can definitely do that, because I run really hard encounters. So usually my players like are gonna want to feel like they need a really high ability in whatever their main ability is going to be, whether that's, it's probably going to be an 18 to 20 right off the bat, because they're almost going to die almost every encounter. And not every time you are going to have, easier encounters at my table, but it's very likely to happen, especially when you're at lower levels, because it is a bit more, it's more challenging, it's a little more realistic, and that way it also helps them feel like they're really growing, because if you're constantly actually challenging your players who are already feeling strong, and they're realizing that maybe we actually are strong, or, they could also be feeling like the opposite and being, I don't want to say put down, but that's not the right word. Being like, oh shoot, maybe I'm not as strong as I thought I was. Maybe the world is it's a little dangerous. So I think it works for my table. Maybe it'll work at yours. I just want to give you an idea. So yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I hope you have an amazing and wonderful day, and it's filled with smiles.